Work, gym. Nice. Cool. And Estela, welcome to class. How are you?
Hi, Jos. I'm great. And you?
Doing well, thanks. And what did you do today?
Well, I went to work and I went to English lessons at the university.
Nice. Okay, good. Sounds like a pretty good day.
Yeah.
All right. And Carolina, how's it going with you?
Hi, teacher. I am doing well, and you?
Doing pretty well. Doing pretty well, thank you. And Carolina, what have you been up to today?
Mm, Nothing much. In the morning, I work, and then taking classes of Berlin.
Okay, work and then taking classes. Cool. And Anna Carolina, how's it going with you?
Hi, Josh. I'm fine, thank you.
Nice. Nice to see you again today. What have you been up to since I saw you last?
I've worked, but just a bit because today was the day that I had to go to the elementary school, and then
Okay.
I went there twice in a hurry, and I've been attending a bunch of classes to prepare myself to teach one afterwards.
Cool.
I
Nice.
am very excited and anxious.
Yeah, it's a nerve-wracking thing, those first classes. You'll be fine though. You'll do good. Uh, you'll do well. Sorry. Good. And so with today's class, let's get started quickly. All right. So, guys, between an essay and a story, um, do you guys have any preference, story or essay? Just shout it out. Get a feel for what you guys want.
Whatever.
Story?
Story.
Okay. Good. And let's get started with Julieta. Can you read the title in the first paragraph?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. The lottery. The morning of June 27th was clear and sunny, with the fresh warmth of a fully summer day. The flowers were blossoming profusely, and the grass was richly green. The people of the village began to gather in a square, between the post office and the bank. Around 10 o'clock, in some towns, there were so many people that a lottery took 2 days and had to be started on June 2nd. But this village where there were only about 300 people, the whole lottery took less than 2 hours. So it could begin at 10 o'clock in the morning and still be through in time to allow the villagers to get home for noon dinner.
Yeah. So this is an old expression. It would noon dinner. This was written in 1948, so that's way out of date. Sounded good. Blossoming profusely. Blossoming profusely.
Blossoming profusely.
Good. And other than that, it sounded good. Questions?
Profusely.
It's like a lot, or in great numbers. Okay. And okay, let's have Jose. Can you read the next paragraph?
Okay. The children assembled first, of course. School was recently over for the summer, and the feeling of liberty sat uneasily on most of them. They turned go gathered together quietly for a while before they broke into boisterous play, and their talk was still of the classroom and the teacher of books and reprimands. Bobby Martin had already stuffed his pockets full of stones, and the other boys soon followed his example, selecting the smoothest and roughest stones. Bobby and Harry Jones and Vicky Delacroix, the villagers pronounced this name Delacroix, Eventually made a great pile of stone in one corner of the square, and walled it against the rails of the other boys. The girls stood aside, talking among themselves, looking over their shoulders, and rolled in the dust or clung to the lands of their older brothers or sisters.
Yeah. Huh. Okay. I can't believe this is not. Hold on. Sorry. It rolled. Looking over their shoulders, it rolled in the dust. Um. Yeah, this would be different. Maybe you could say as they rolled in the dust.
As they rolled in the dust.
Yeah, I'm not really sure. Sorry.
Yes.
Yeah.
There,
Assembled.
there are a mistake, no?
Sorry? Yeah, it's just a mistake in the
It's just a
version that I
mistake.
found. Can you repeat assembled?
Assemble.
Recently.
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 Okay.
Ended.
Recently.
Ended.
Tended.
Boisterous.
Boisterous.
And
Guard.
guarded. Guarded.
Guarded.
Nope.
Guarded.
Guarded. Guarded.
Guarded. Okay.
Okay.
Guarded.
And yeah.
I see the was very a little
Small?
small.
Okay. Let's do this. Probably a little bit better.
Yes.
And let's have Ksenia, can you read the next paragraph?
From soon?
Soon. Oh, sorry. Boisterous is like noisy and uncontrolled, by the way, too. They're like almost violent. Yeah, and Ksenia, go ahead.
Soon the men began to gather, surveying their own children, speaking of planting and rain, tractors and taxes. They stood together, away from the pile of stones in the corner, and their jokes were quiet, and they smiled rather than laughed. The women, wearing faded house dresses and sweaters, came shortly after their menfolk. They greeted one another and exchanged bits of gossip as they went to join their husbands. Soon the women, standing by their husbands, began to call to their children, and the children came reluctantly, having to be called 4 or 5 times. Bobby Martin ducked under his mother's grasping hand and ran, laughing, back to the pile of stones. His father spoke up sharply, and Bobby came quickly and took his place between his father and his oldest brother.
Good. Can you repeat reluctantly?
Reluctantly? Reluctantly?
Good. And ducked, like went underneath. So if you duck something, you like get low, go underneath something, and continue on. So that's ducking. So if maybe a baseball is coming at your head, somebody will say duck, which means just get down. And Adela, can you read the next paragraph?
Yes. The lottery was conducted as were the square dance, the teen club, the Halloween program by Mr. Summers, who had time and energy to devote to civic uh, you sorry I to civic activity. He was a round-faced, jovial man, and he ran the coal business, and people were sorry for him because he had no children and his wife was a scold. When he arrived in the square carrying the black wooden box, there was a murmur of conversation among the villagers. and he waved and called, "Little late today, folks." The postmaster, Mr. Grave, followed him, carrying a three-legged stool, and his stool was put in the center of the square, and Mr. Summers set the black box down on it. The villagers kept their distance, leaving a space between themselves and the stool, and when Mr. Summers said, "Some of you fellows want to give me a hand?" there was a hesitation before two men. Mr. Martin and his oldest son, Baxter, came forward to hold the box steady on the stool, while Mr. Summers stared up the paper inside it.
Okay, stirred.
Um,
Stirred.
sorry? Stir.
Stirred. Stirred. D.
Stir.
Nope, missing the D. Stirred.
Stir.
You're missing the D at the end. Stirred.
Stir.
You're saying stir. You need to say stirred. That D at the end.
Stirred.
Good. Better. Stirred.
Okay. Stirred.
Good. And a stool is like a little chair that doesn't have a back. A stool is a chair with no back. Okay.
Okay.
And maybe, yeah, I think that sounded pretty good. Well, no other questions. Let's go. Keep going. Anna Carolina, can you read the next paragraph?
Okay. The original paraphernalia, I don't know.
Really close. Paraphernalia.
The original paraphernalia. Ah, gosh.
Paraphernalia.
Okay, sorry. The original paraphernalia
Yeah.
for the lottery had been lost long ago, and the black box now resting on the stool had been put into use even before Old Man Warner, the oldest man in town, was born.
Keep going.
Because you had split it. Okay. Mr. Summers spoke frequently to the villagers about making a new box, but no one liked to upset even as much tradition as represented by the black box. There was a story that the present box had been made with some pieces of box that had preceded it, the one that had been constructed when the first people settled down to make a village here. Every year after the lottery, Mr. Summers began talking again about a new box, but every year the subject was allowed to fade off without anything being done. Keep going
Yeah.
or stop?
You're good there. That sounded good. Paraphernalia is just like stuff that is used for something. So like the original things that were used for the lottery. And it doesn't look like there are any other questions. Let's have Carolina. Can you read the next part, maybe paragraph?
The black box grew shabbier each year. By now it was no longer completely black, but splintered badly along one side to show the original good color, and in some places faded or stained. Mr. Martin and his older son Buster held the black box securely on the stool until Mr. Summers had stirred the papers thoroughly with his hand, because so much of the ritual had been forgotten or discarded. Mr. Summers had been successful in having slips of paper substituted for the chips of wood that had been used for generations. Chips of wood, Mr. Summers had argued, had been all very well when the village was tiny, but now the population was more than 300 and likely to keep on growing. It was necessary to use something that could fit more easily into his black box.
You're right. It was the into the
Okay.
black box.
Okay.
Yeah. Um, really good reading. Let's look at stained.
Stained,
Good. And stirred.
stirred,
Stirred.
stirred, stirred.
Yeah. Thoroughly.
Uh, throw. Okay. Thoroughly, thoroughly,
Thoroughly. Yeah.
thoroughly, thoroughly,
Thoroughly.
thoroughly.
Yeah. Thoroughly. Successful.
Successful. I say successfully.
Yeah, I think
I
so.
remember.
Um, okay. Shabbier is something that is old and kind of falling apart. So something that's shabby is falling apart, and this is more falling apart than it used to be. So it's shabbier each year. It's kind of more worn out. Um, yeah, worn. I hope that's not a question. That's a synonym. Yeah, kind of. Shabbier is like less pleasant than worn. Something that's worn can be kind of nice, where something that's shabby is like really bad. So I guess the context or the connotation is a little bit different. Splintered is what happens when wood kind of breaks up. You have long like pieces of wood that can like are sharp generally, and that would be a splinter. And so something that is splintering, it's like coming apart. So it's a wood that is kind of coming apart, becoming sharp. Shabbier. She could be looking shabbier. You could describe a person as looking shabby. Um, It'd be kind of confused with their clothes, though. Often clothes are considered shabby. But yeah, you could use it for people as well. Uh, okay, and let's have um, Estela. Can you read the next paragraph?
Yes, it's the night before. There.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the next sentence as well.
Okay. The night before the lottery, Mr. Summers and Mr. Graves made up these slips of paper and put them in the box, and it was then taken to the safe of Mr. Summers' coal company and locked up until Mr. Summers was ready to take it into the square next morning. The rest of the year the box was put away, sometimes one place, sometimes another. It had spent 1 year in Mr. Graves' barn and another year underfoot in the post office, and sometimes it was set on a shelf in the Martin grocery and left there.
This next sentence too.
Okay. There was a great deal of fussing or fussing not to be done before Mr. Summers declared the lottery open.
Fussing can be complaining. It can also be this. It's like a lot of talking and like dealing with small trivial details. So if you're fussing over something, it's like you're trying to make something small work well.
Okay.
Yeah, and then shelf. Can you repeat shelf, Estela?
What is it?
Shelf.
Okay, shelf.
Close. That sh sound is a little bit more pronounced. Shelf.
Shelf.
Perfect. There you go.
Okay.
And it doesn't look like there are any other questions here. Let's have Julieta. Can you read the next paragraph?
There were the lists to make up, of heads of families, heads of households in each family, members of each household in each family. There was the proper swearing in of Mr. Summers by the postmaster as the official of the lottery, At one time some people remembered that had been a recital of some sort performed by the official of the lottery, a functionary,
A lot of these periods
tuneless.
are commas. I'm sorry too.
Oh,
Yeah, so it's going to be really hard to read, but if it's
tuneless.
yeah,
Okay, sorry. Tuneless shunt that had been rattled off duly each year. Some people believe that the official of the lottery used to stand just so when he said or sang it. Others believe that he was supposed to walk among the people, but years and years ago this part of the ritual had been allowed to lapse.
good. A recital. Recital.
Recital.
Uh-huh.
Recital.
Recital of some sort. Really nice job with like rattled off Dooley, perfunctory, tuneless. I mean, it sounded good. Just recital. A swearing in is when you make somebody like an official in something. So if somebody is made a judge, they have to go through a swearing in where they promise they will not lie or cheat or do things like that. So that's like a swearing in. Um, yeah. And lapse is like to pause. So there are like periods of time where it doesn't happen. Um, yeah, about allowed to lapse. So it's like allowed to not happen. And so there's this period of time where there's not there. Um, Perfunctory is like kind of like really quick. Yeah, just quick. Rattled off duly. So it's like duly is dutifully, so something that you have to do. And if you rattle something off, it's just like you say it without really putting much meaning to it. And so he just said it without thinking about it every year. So it was kind of a tuneless thing that you say. It's like the Pledge of Allegiance or something like that. Some national song that you don't think about, you just say. You rattle it off duly. Does that make sense, hopefully, to everybody? All right. Uh, Jose, can you read the next paragraph? Next two paragraphs, actually, Jose. Jose?
Okay, just just as just as Mr. Summers finally left off.
This right here.
Yes. There had been also a ritual salute, which the official of the lottery had to use in addressing each person who came up to draw from the box. But this also had changed with time until now it was felt necessary only for the official to speak
Sorry.
to each person approaching. Mr. Summers was very good at all this. In his clean white shirt and blue jeans, with one hand resting carelessly on the black box, he seemed very proper and important as he talked interminably to Mr. Graves and the Martins. Just as Mr. Summers finally left off talking and turned to the assembled villagers, Mr. Hutchinson came hurriedly along the path to the square, her sweater thrown over her shoulders, and slid into place in the back of the crowd.
In the back of the crowd.
In the back of the crowd.
Assembled.
Assembled. Assembled.
Finally.
Assembled. Finally. Official.
And good. Ritual salute.
Ritual salute.
Yeah, ritual salute. Good.
Ritual salute.
Really nicely done. Sorry. Don't be sorry about so many questions. Questions are good, and especially if we're writing them here. I just want to get to the end of this story because the end is really what makes the story really good. And yeah, so questions here? It doesn't look like it. Let's have Adela. Can you read the next paragraph?
Okay. Lynn forgot what day it was, she said to Mr. Delacroix, who stood next to her, and they both laughed softly. I thought my old man was out back stacking wood. Mr. Hutchinson went on, and then I looked out the window, and the kids was gone. And then I remembered it was the 27th and came a running. She dried her hands on her apron, and Mr. Delacroix said, "You are in time, though. They're still talking away up there."
One more sentence.
Mr. Hutchinson craned her neck to see through the crowd and found her husband and children standing near the front.
Okay, good. Husband and children. Craned her neck to see through the crowd.
Sorry,
Craned her neck
craned her neck,
to see through the crowd. Good.
craned her neck to see through the crowd. A lot
Yeah.
of air.
Yeah, try
Apron,
to make sure you get the apron.
apron,
Apron.
apron,
Put
a
an in.
running,
Apron.
apron,
Good. There you go. Her apron. Came a running.
came running.
Good. So it's the 27th of June, which is the day that we are in now. So this is the day of the lottery, is the 27th of June. She realizes it's the 27th, and she came running because she's like, I'm going to be late. Don't want to be late. Good. And, yep, good. Ana Carolina, can you read the next paragraph?
From she?
Yeah.
She tapped Mr. Delacroix on the arm as a farewell and began to make her way through the crowd. The people separated good-humouredly to let her through. 2 or 3 people said in voices just loud enough to be heard across the crowd, "Here comes your Mrs. Hutchinson, Hutchinson and Bill." She made it to. After all, Mr. Hutchinson reached her husband, and Mr. Somers, who had been waiting, said cheerfully, "Thought we were going to have to get on without you, Tessie." Mr. Hutchinson said, grinning, "Would you have me leave my dishes in the sink now? Would you, Joe?" And soft laughter ran through the crowd as the people steered back into position after Mr. Hinchison's arrival.
Mrs. Hutchinson's.
Mrs. Hutchinson's arrival.
Hutchinson's.
Hutchinson's.
Yeah. Mrs. is just spelt out Mrs. M-R-S. And remember this part, so Mrs. Hutchinson is late. Relatively important. Her name is Tessie. Wouldn't have me leave my dishes in the sink now, would ya, Joe? Again, these are commas. This is just this is a way of speaking. Wouldn't have me leave my dishes in the sink. Craned and grinning. So if you're craning, you're like trying to stretch your neck so you can see more. And if you're grinning, you're smiling. Yeah, hopefully that makes sense. And let's have Carolina. Can you read for a little while? I'll tell you when to stop.
Okay. From well now?
From well now, yeah.
Okay. Well now, Mr. Somers said soberly. Guess We better get started, get this over with, so we can go back to work. Anybody ain't here? Dunbar. Several people say, Dunbar, Dunbar. Mr. Summer consulted his list. Clyde Dunbar, he said. That's right. He's broke his leg, hasn't he? Who's drawing for him? Me, I guess, a woman said, and Mr. Summers turned to look at her. Wife draws for her husband.
Nice. Okay. That sounded good. Uh, so as we can go back to work, it's like so that we can. There's a lot of written dialect. So this is kind of like Midwestern or like Southern dialect. It's not necessarily clear. But he's broke his leg. Again, more dialect. Um, it's like he has broken his leg. Um, or he broke his leg, he'd probably want to say. But good. And doesn't look like there are any questions. Let's have Estela. Can you read until year?
Yes, Mr. Summers said, don't you have a grown boy to do it for you, Janie? Although Mr. Summers and everyone else in the village knew the answer perfectly well. It was the business of the official of the lottery to ask such questions formally. Mr. Summers waited with an expression of polite interest while Mrs. Dunbar answered. Horace not but 16 bet. Mrs. Dunbar said regretfully, "Guess I gotta fill in for the old man this year." Right. Uh, this is Mr. Summers said. He made a note on the list he was holding. Then he asked Watson boy drawing this year?
Good. Okay. Horace is not. Horace is not, but 16 yet.
Okay, Horace is not.
Yeah. Can you repeat formally?
Formally.
Good. Okay. And yeah, you're right. It could be Senior Summers, but I think Mr. Summers is probably it. I can't believe there are so many errors on this. Yeah, really sorry.
Don't worry.
Um, but good. It doesn't look like there are any other questions here. Fill in for the old man. It's like take his place. So the wife is going to take his place, and then he asks about the Watson boy. Judetta, can you read from here?
From where, sorry?
So from right.
Right. Right, Mr. Sam said. He made a note of the list
Oh,
he was holding.
sorry, it's actually from a tall boy.
A tall boy in the crowd raised his hand. "Here," he said, "I'm drawing for my mother and me." He blinked his eyes nervously and ducked his head as several voices in the crowd said things like, "Good fellow, Black," and "Glad to see your mother got a man to do it." "Well," Mrs. Summers said, "guess that's everyone, old man. That's everyone. Old man Warner make it." "Here," a voice said, and Mrs. Summers nodded. A sudden hush fell on the crowd as Mr. Summers cleared his throat and looked at the list. "All ready?" he called. "Now I'll read names, head of families, first, and the men come up and take a paper out of the box. Keep the paper folded in your hand without looking at it until everyone has had a turn. Everything clear?"
Good. Heads of families first.
"Heads of families first."
Good. Okay. And it doesn't look like there are any questions. Okay. Jose, can you read the next part? Jose?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. Can you read?
Okay, yes. The people had done it so many times that they only have listened to the directions. Most of them were quiet, wetting their lips, not looking around. Then Mr. Summers raised one hand high and said, "Adams!" A man disengaged himself from the crowd and came forward. "Hi, Steve," Mr. Summers said, and Mr. Adams said, "Hi, Joe." They grinned at one another humorously and nervously. Then Mr. Adams reached into the black box and took out a folded paper. He held it firmly by one corner as he turned and went hastily back to his place in the crowd, where he stood a little apart from his family, not looking down at his hand.
Nice. Um, raised. Raised.
Raised. Mr. Summers raised
Humorously.
humorously,
Nervously.
nervously.
Yeah. And what was the other? Hastily. Hastily is like in a rush. So like quickly. Can you repeat hastily, Jose?
Hastily, hastily, hastily,
Hastily. Um, yeah. So if you're
hastily.
doing something quickly or in a rush, you're doing it hastily.
Okay.
Adela, can you keep reading from Alan?
Alan, Mr. Summers said, Anderson, Bentham. Seems like there's no time at all between Lothary anymore, Mrs. Delacroix said to Mrs. Graves in the back row. Seems like we got through with the last one only last week. Time sure goes fast, Mr. Grave said. Clark, Delacroix, there goes my old man, Mrs. Delacroix said. She held her breath while her husband went forward. Dunbar, Mr. Summers said, and Mrs. Dunbar went steadily to the box while one of the women said, "Go on, Jenny," and another said, "There she goes."
Good. Let's look at forward.
Forward,
Don't forget the D's at the end. I've seen this a couple times in this class.
forward, forward.
Yeah, forward. Yeah, so be careful of that. That's definitely something I've noticed. Mrs. Graves,
Mrs. Grave,
and lotteries.
Lotteries.
Yeah, good. And doesn't look like there are any questions. Let's keep reading. Anna Carolina, can you read for what?
Where next? Mrs. Graves said. She watched while Mrs. Graves came around from the side of the box, greeted Mr. Summers gravely, and selected a slip of paper from the box. By now, out through the crowd there were men holding the small folded papers in their large hands, turning them over and over nervously. Mr. Dunbar and her two sons stood together, Mrs. Dunbar holding the slip of paper. Harbord Hutchinson. "Get up there, Bill," Mrs. Hutchinson said, and the people near her laughed. "Jones, they do say," Mr. Adams said to old man Warner, who stood next to him, "that over in the North Village they're talking of giving up the lottery."
Yeah, that over in the North Village they're talking of giving up the lottery. Good, that sounded great. Just Mr. Graves. I think you said Mrs. Graves. Other than that, really nicely done. Questions here? Okay. And let's have Carolina. Can you read the next part? Actually, hold
Okay.
on. There we go.
Okay. Old man Warner snorted "Pack of crazy fools," he said, "listening to the young folks. Nothing's good enough for them. Next thing you know, they'll be waiting to go back to living in caves. Nobody work anymore like that way for a while. Used to be a saying about lottery in June. Corn be heavy soon. First thing you know, we'd all be eating stewed chicken with and a corn. There is always been a lottery. He added pet, petulantly,
It's a hard one.
but enough to see Joe Summer up there joking with everybody. Some places have already quit lotteries, Mr. Adams said. Nothing but trouble in that. Old man Warner said stoutly, pack of young fools.
Okay. They'll be wanting.
Quantin,
Yeah, yeah. Stewed,
stewed,
stewed chickweed,
chickweed,
and acorns.
acorns, acorns,
Petulantly.
pet, petulantly, pet, petulantly,
Yeah, petulantly.
petulantly,
And again, be careful with the misses and the misters. Misses. Um, Nicely done. Acorns are a type of nut that come from an oak tree. So they're roundish and small, and they have a little cap. So it's an acorn. You can't eat them. Same thing with chickweed. I think it's just a weed, some sort of plant. If you stew something, you just cook it in a pot with water for a long time. If you're doing something petulantly, it's like you're doing it childishly, complainingly. So like, there's always been a lottery. I don't know. You kind of like whining about it. You're talking like a child. If you say something stoutly, it's like you say it firmly and confidently. So pretty much, I think of Donald Trump likes to say things stoutly, even though he's kind of an idiot. Sorry for political statements. But yeah, stoutly. That would be like, you say something stoutly. You firmly believe in it. It's kind of got a connotation of being stupid and stubborn, because it's like stout is like short and fat, so you've got like, it's not a far-reaching idea, but it's like something that stays put. Say something stoutly. Hopefully, like pig-headedly, kind of. Yeah. Good. And I think that was Carolina. Was that Carolina who just read? Yes?
Yes, you
Yeah,
got me.
sorry. Estela, can you read until sun? Actually, read until Zanini.
Yes, Martin. And Bobby Martin watched his father go forward, over dike, Percy. I wish they'd hurry. Mrs. Dunbar said to her older son, I wish they'd hurry. They're almost through, her son said. You get ready to run. Tell that, Mrs. Dunbar said. Mr. Summers called his own name and then stepped forward precisely and selected a slip from the box. Then he called, Warner. 77th year I've been in the lottery. Old man Warner said as he went through the crowd. 77th time. Watson, the tall boy, came awkwardly through the crowd. Someone said, Don't be nervous, Jack. And Mr. Summers said, Take your time, son. Sonini.
Good. Awkwardly.
Awkwardly.
And precisely.
Precisely.
Good. Yeah. Good. And I think we're good. There's no questions, it looks like. Okay. And Julieta, can you read the next part?
After that, there was a long pause, a breathless pause. until Mr. Summers, holding a slip of paper in the air, said, "All right, fellows." For a minute no one moved, and then all the slips of paper were opened. Suddenly all the women began to speak at once, saying,
Yeah,
"Who
good.
is it? Who has got it? Is it the Dunbars? Is it the Watsons?" Then the voices began to say, "It's Hutchinson! It's Bill! Bill Hutchinson! Got it? Go tell your father." Mrs. Dunbar said to her older son. People began to look around to see the Hutchinsons. Bill Hutchinson was standing quiet, staring down at the paper in his hand. Suddenly, Tessie Hutchinson shouted to Mr. Summer, "Who did? Who didn't? You didn't give him time enough to take any paper he wanted. I saw you. It wasn't fair." "Be a good sport, Tessie," Mrs. Delacroix called, and Mrs. Graves said, "All of us took the same chance."
Good. Really nice job. Really good
Okay.
voices. That sounded great. Does anybody, no questions? Um, let's go and have Jose. Can you read the next bit?
Shut up, Tessie, Bill Hutchinson said. "Well, everyone," Mr. Summers said. "That was done pretty fast, and now we've got to be hurrying a little more to get done in time." He consulted his next list. "Bill," he said, "you draw for the Hutchinson family. You got any other households in the Hutchinsons?" "There's Don and Eva," Mrs. Hutchinson yelled. "Make them take their chance. Daughters draw with their husbands. Families, Tessie," Mr. Summers said firmly. "You know that as well as anyone else." "I wasn't fair," Tessie said. "I guess not, Joe," Bill Hutchinson said regretfully. My daughter draws with her husband's family. That's only fair, and I've got no other family except the kids. Then, as far as drawing for families is concerned, it's you," Mr. Summers said, in explanation. "And as far as drawing for households is concerned, that's you, too, right?"
Yeah, that's you too, right? Households
"That's you too, right?" Households.
and
Households.
daughters.
Daughters.
Good. Uh, questions? No questions. Um, so yeah, Mrs. Hutchinson, who we met a little bit earlier, is also Tessie. So remember Tessie and Mrs. Hutchinson. Her husband is Bill Hutchinson. Um, Adela. Uh, Adela, can you read the next part?
Yes, right, Bill Hutchinson said. "How many kids, Bill?" Mr. Salmon asked formally. "Three," Bill Hutchinson said. "There is Bill Junior and Nancy and little Dave, and Tessie and me." "All right, then," Mr. Summers said. "Harry, you got their tickets back?" Mr. Grave nodded and held up the slips of paper. "Put them in the box, then," Mr. Summers directed. "Take Bill's and put it in. I think we ought to start." Mrs. Hutchinson said as quietly as she could. "I tell you it wasn't fair. You didn't give him time enough to choose. Everybody saw that."
Good. That sounded good. You didn't give him how much. She's already saw that. Okay. And Carolina, can you read the next part?
Okay. There, there, Bill Hutchinson said.
Mm,
No?
you're breaking up a little bit. Try start again.
This is until Mr. Graves?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Mr. Graves had selected the 5 slips and put them in the box, and he dropped all the papers but those onto the ground, where the breeze caught them and lifted them off. "Listen, everybody," Mr. Hutchinson was saying to the people around her. "Ready, Bill?" Mr. Sumner asked, and Bill Hutchinson, with one quick glance around at his wife and children, nodded. "Remember," Mr. Somers said, "take the slip and keep them folded until each person has taken one. Harry, you help little Dave." Mr. Graves took the hand of the little boy, who came willingly with him up to the box. "Take a paper out of the box, Davy," Mr. Somers said. Davy put his hand into the box and laughed.
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 Good. Okay, Julieta, can you? Oh, yeah, we're at Julieta. Julieta, can you read the next part?
Mm, take just one paper? No. Nancy next, Mrs. Summers said.
Oh,
Nancy, oh,
yeah, sorry, take just one paper. Sorry.
take just one paper, Mrs. Summers said. Harry, you hold it for him. Mr. Graves took the children's hat and removed the folded paper.
Sorry.
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Folded paper.
The folded paper from the tight fist and held it while little Dave stood next to him and looked up at him wonderingly. Nancy next, Mrs. Summers said. Nancy was 12, and her school friend breathed heavily as she went forward, switching her skirt, and took a slip daintily from the box. "Bill, Junior," Mr. Summers said, and Billy, his face red and his feet overlarge, near knocked the box over as he got a paper out. "Tessie," Mrs. Summers said. She hesitated for a minute, looking around defiantly, and then set her lips and went up to the box. She snatched a paper out and held it behind her. "Bill," Mr. Summers said, and Bill Hutchinson reached into the box and felt around, bringing his head out of at last with the slip of paper in it.
Defiantly.
Defiantly.
Good. And breathe.
Breathe.
Good. And let's have Jose. Can you read the next part?
Okay. The crowd The crowd was quiet. A girl whispered, "I hope it's not Nancy," and the sound of the whisper reached the edge of the crowd. "It's not the way it used to be," Old Man Warner said clearly. "People ain't the way they used to be." "All right," Mr. Summers said. "Open the papers. Hurry. You open little Davis." Mr. Graves opened the slip of paper, and there was a general sigh through the crowd as he held it up and everyone could see that it was blank. Nancy and Bill George opened theirs at the same time, and both beamed and laughed. Turning around to the crowd and holding their slip of paper above their heads. "Tessie," Mr. Summers said. There was a pause, and then Mr. Summers looked at Bill Hutchinson, and Bill unfolded his paper and showed it. It was blank.
Good. Beamed. Beamed and laughed.
Beamed,
Yeah.
both beamed.
It's like smiled a lot. Smiled really happily.
Yes, smiled a lot.
Yeah. And Dada, can you read the next bit?
It's Tessie, Mr. Summers said, and his voice was hushed. Show us her paper, Bill. Bill Hutchinson went over to his wife and forced the slip of paper out of her hand. It had a black spot on it. The black spot Mr. Summers had made the night before with a heavy pencil in the coal company office. Bill Hutchinson held it up, and there was a stir in the crowd. "All right, folks," Mr. Summers said, "let's finish quickly." Although the villagers had forgotten the ritual and lost the original black box, they still remembered to use stone. The pile of stone the boy had made early was ready. There were stones on the ground with the blowing scraps of paper and had come out of the box. Delacroix selected a stone so large she had to pick it up with both hands and turned to Mrs. Dunbar.
Stones.
Stones.
Earlier.
Earlier.
Good. And Catalina, can you read the next part?
Okay. Come on, she said. Hurry up. Mr. Dunbar had small stones in both hands, and she said, gasping for breath, I can't run at all. You'll have to go ahead and I'll catch up with you. The children had stones already, and someone gave little Davy Hutchinson few pebbles. Daisy Hutchinson was in the center of a clearly space by now, and she held her hands out desperately as the villagers moved in on her. "It isn't fair," she said. A stone hit her on the side of the head. Old Man Warner was saying, come on, everyone." Steve Adam was in the front of the crowd of the villagers, with Mrs. Graves beside him. "Isn't fair, it isn't right," Mrs. Hutchinson screamed, and then there were upon her.
Good. Villagers.
Villagers.
Desperately. Desperately.
Desperately. Desperately.
Cleared.
Desperately. Cleared. Cleared.
Yeah. Any questions here?
Mm.
Yeah. Okay. So, definitely macabre. Um, Definitely a dark story. Hopefully you guys liked it. It's a really famous one in the U.S. The magazine that published it, I think in 1948, got a lot of people complaining about it. But yeah, hopefully you liked it. If you have any questions, feel free to ask or write if you think of something. But if not, have a really good day, and thanks for coming in, and thanks for class.
Thank you,
Thank you.
teacher. Bye bye.
Good night.